I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we continue our investigation into Flask, and we're going to start to use templates. Now, templates are really awesome, and they're really going to help you to organize your HTML, and it's going to take a lot of that stuff out of the processing in Python, and it's going to make our lives a lot easier. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, templates is a solution to where we're going to store all of our formatting and layout and things like that, and a lot of the logic of our application, but not all of it. Let's get to it. Have a Windows server or a Windows computer with remote desktop enabled so you can access it from the internet. Install my RDP cloaker to stop RDP spammers from eating up your internet bandwidth, filling your logs with failed attempts, and greatly reduce the probability of a malicious login. Make sure to check for additional links in the description. Okay guys, super fun one today. We are going to really start breaking Flask open today in using the templates. And I'm going to open our code from last time. Make sure to go back and check out the previous episodes where we got started with setup and using things like variables and routing and all that stuff. So we've got all that figured out. This is a simple little script, but we've got this sort of top section of HTML and this bottom section of HTML, and we're kind of putting HTML together to make a complete page. We've got some coding in between, and if you thought that looked kind of clunky, you're absolutely right, and there is a solution for that in the form of Flask templates, and we're going to be working on that today. Here is our directory, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new folder next to our app file, so that's the my app py, and we're going to call our new folder templates. And we can start our application like we did in our previous episodes. We'll go to our command prompt here, and we can navigate to the directory where we installed our virtual environment for Python, and specifically for our Flask deployment here. And so what we can do is we'll navigate there, and then we're going to use that .venv, and we'll do that activate script there, and that's going to start our environment. And so from there, we have Flask installed already. Make sure to go back to the starting episodes if you are wondering how to install Flask, and to run our application as far as we got to last time, we can use that run command there, and there we go. There is our local host on port 5000, and we've got a web page running there, and you can see we can change the province selection by changing our URL, and our little app will sort of spin there for a moment, and then it will return that after it does some querying against the Excel sheet that we used as the data source for this. And so that's really awesome. That's how far we got to last time. You can see it chose British Columbia and then Alberta. And in order to quit from our Flask application there, we can use the Control-C, and that's going to drop us back into our virtual environment directory there. And so that's what we really wanted to see. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to take this entire section here, and we want to take all of the HTML out of it. And in order to do that, we'll copy that entire section that has the start and end tags for HTML there, and we'll paste that into Notepad++. Now you might have another editor that you use. I really like Notepad++. It's pretty awesome, and all we need to do is we'll remove that first little section there, and we're just going to do very quickly, we'll do some find and replace. So we'll replace that HTML plus equals with a space behind it there, and then we'll do a find replace of all of the double quotes, and we'll replace them with nothing. We'll also do the /n, and we will replace that with nothing, and we will also do the backticks, and we're going to replace those with actual double quotes. And then we're basically done. All we have to do is remove, there's a end bracket there after the H2, and that's really it. So let's go ahead and we'll highlight everything, and we'll do the Shift tab, and we'll do a bunch of Shift tabs to left justify everything, and now we can put in our own indenting. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab some sections, we'll indent the head section there, and then we'll indent the HTML after that, and then we can indent our body section as well. We want to do that. We'll grab that whole section here, and then we'll do a tab to indent that section, and now we've got sort of like an HTML page that looks like an indented HTML page. And you can see I saved it on that tab. It's called province html.html. And so now what we can do is, now that we have that in our template, we're going to remove the whole starting section of HTML there, but we want to keep our data frame processing and our city filter there, and we'll keep our HTML that is generated from the table, and we will remove the plus equal, and we'll make that into an equal there. And then this entire end section of HTML, we can remove that, and that is what we need to do there. And you can see that our code gets remarkably shorter because we've moved a bunch of the HTML and things into the template file. So now we have to manage two files, but that's okay, it's better organized. Okay, so from Flask we're going to import render template. That is what we're seeing there. So that's our Flask, and we're going to grab our render template there, and that is going to give us the ability to use that HTML page that we just created, and instead of passing HTML that we created in Python directly, now we can use the template HTML that is returned. And of course that is dynamic, so we're going to remove the HTML from the return statement there, and we're going to use the render template method to generate our HTML for this particular routing, which is the province routing. And so what we can do is we can do a render template, and we'll use that province underscore template.html that we created. And after we specify our HTML page, we can start putting in the variables that we're going to use, or the variables we're going to pass to the template itself. So I'm making one variable called province list, and I'm setting that equal to the HTML variable that I generated from my data frame. I'm using that pandas2html to make an HTML variable that's loaded with a table, and I can use another comma to specify an additional variable if I would like to do that, and I can call that one province abbreviation, and we'll take the province abbreviation from the province underscore abbreviation Python variable, and that should be good enough for a demonstration. So now we've got our render template, we're using that province template HTML, and we're going to pass in the province list, which is a HTML table, and we're going to pass in a province abbreviation, which is just a string that has the province abbreviation on it. And so you can see that we're passing in some variables that we created or we received in, from the user, and we need to use those in our template, but we only have HTML in our template, and so you might be wondering, how can we add our variables or the variable values into our template output? And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to use those curly braces. If we do a double curly brace, those are for expressions, and in this case we're just passing in a variable that has a value. You can also use a curly brace with a %sign, and that will allow you to do statements and have some program flow like if-then statements and those kinds of things, and we'll be covering that in our next episode. But for today, we've got our province abbreviation. You can see it there, and it gets loaded with the underscore abbreviation Python variable, and you can see the province list, which is loaded with the HTML Python variable that is generated from that to_HTML. And so notice that the spelling is exactly the same as what we see here in the template with the province abbreviation variable there inside of the curly braces. And also notice that the province abbreviation is just a string, and it's going to be escaped of all kinds of characters and things. Flask will do that automatically so that we don't have any unsafe content getting into our page. Now the province list is some HTML that we'd like to render, and so we can use that safe flag so that the HTML will actually be rendered by the browser. Otherwise it'll be escaped, and you'll actually see the HTML in the browser. And so we want to use that safe flag because we generated our province list from the cities data frame using the toHTML method you see there, and that is valid HTML. We do want the browser to render that, and so we have to use that safe flag. Okay, let's save our file, and we'll go back to our command prompt, and we can run our code again here. So we can hit the up arrow to get the last command that was run in our console there, and hit enter, and then let's bring up our browser and try a different selection so that it will refresh from the server. So I put Ontario in there, and now you can see the spinny wheels going in the browser tab on the top left there, and we should get Ontario, and there we go. So we've got our list of cities for Ontario. We're using the ON, which is the abbreviation, and we can grab a different province by typing in a different abbreviation. So I'll put Manitoba in there, and you can see the spinny wheel. That is actually quite a big Excel sheet, so it takes a little while for it to filter, but you can see we are getting the output that we'd like, and the table is rendered just the way that it was before. So we can use our Control-C in the command prompt there. That'll stop our Flask server, and we can go back to our app file here. So what if we wanted to use our province name instead? Well, we could copy that value, and we could use that as our second variable being passed into our template. We could use the province name variable instead, and so let's save that in our app file, our app.py or myapp.py. And we'll go back to our template here, and now we got to change that variable name to be province name instead. And so let's go ahead and save this. So we're saving our template. We can minimize that, and we'll go back and rerun our app using the up arrow to grab the last command, hit enter, and it has started on port 5000. Let's go take a look and see what we got here. Okay, so the page is already there. In order to see the changes, we have to refresh it. So now let's put in SK for Saskatchewan, and we can see our Flask application is got the spinny on the top left there, and now we're getting the full name. So now it says our city list for Saskatchewan, and if we put in BC, it'll go ahead and filter through that as well from the Excel sheet. And let's see, there are our cities for British Columbia, just as we wanted to see, except now we are using a Flask template instead of generating our own HTML, and that is going to make our application much more powerful. That's how you can use render template with Flask. Need effective time entry for your staff and contractors out in the field? Make sure to check out my Bill Zone system. The link is in the description.